Is it even possible for me to say that me, Matt Martin, is going to sacrifice? This just come alive to me. I hope this is theologically correct. Fact checkers, go find me out, but I believe I'm onto something, that God honors obedience more than sacrifice.
That's what the scripture says.
That's what the scripture says. Why? Because I'm really not sacrificing. I'm just obeying.
It was all mine anyway.
That's good. I'm gonna go with you on that one.
Hey everybody, before we jump into today's episode, we'd like to recognize all those who make this podcast possible. The Lead Today show is supported by all the generous donors of the Lead Today community. Thank you so much for investing in shaping leaders through this podcast. And be sure to like and subscribe on whatever platform you are watching or listening today. All right, let's jump into the podcast.
Welcome back to the Today Counts show. I want to, first of all, say thank you for some of the emails that we have been receiving about not just what we've been talking about through Genesis, but your encouragement, also the introductions that you are making to others, and as well as some of you who are already planning out our future for us in other books of the Bible that you want us to walk through. So that's fun, and we appreciate it very, very much. And we do like our format. It is an experiment where we kind of visualize ourselves in a coffee shop, reading the Bible together and talking through it. And as believers, but I want to reintroduce my team here with me. We have Pastor Matt Martin, who pastors at North Rock Church in San Antonio, Texas, and who has his book is about to come off the press, entitled, what is it, Matt? Notice
what matters.
Notice what matters. Yeah. And I've already taken a little bit of a sneak preview into some of what he shared with me, the diagram which the whole book is based upon. So be paying attention to that. And of course, what we can always count on Pastor Matt to do is to use the entire book of the Bible to help us understand, or the volumes of the Bible to help us understand the one word that we might be reading anywhere in the Bible. So I'm counting on that. Then, of course, we have the Honorable Gary Harpst, who was, we first got to know each other through an introduction of a third party, and I interviewed him on my podcast, this podcast, the Today Counts show. Gary is the founder of Lead First, and has also authored, I think, 3 books. What's your latest book, Gary?
Built to Beat Chaos. The premise is biblical premise is that chaos is not our enemy, but our purpose.
And that is the exact book that I interviewed you about, right? When we were together on the podcast. So, and Gary, remind everybody where they can go to learn more about you and your book.
Oh, our website would be great, leadfirst.ai.
All right, leadfirst.ai. And then third is Pastor Winston Harris, who is a campus pastor, among other things, at North Rock Church in San Antonio, Texas. He was also a college basketball player. He's got a lot of great stories about his life, but probably even more important than that, it's always hard for us to leave our sports background because that's our claim to fame. We hold on to it for as long as we can until something greater comes along, which has. And of course, he's a married man now. He's got a little girl, and we hear another little girl on the way. So, and he is the king of wordsmithing. So it's always fun to hear Pastor Winston, or who I call W often. So anyway, guys, we are now in chapter 8. We're right in the middle of a catastrophe. We're in the middle of a flood. And the reason why you want to listen to the rest of this podcast or this episode today is because you don't want to step out in the middle of the story without finishing it. And we've still got quite a bit to go. So I'll start the reading today in the NLT, New Living Translation, an idiomatic translation, meaning it's translated thought by thought, idea by idea, whilst trying to stay as close to the original language as possible with all the limitations that translation causes. We're in chapter 8, and it starts this way. But God remembered Noah and all the animals in the boat. He sent a wind to blow across the waters, and the floods began to disappear. The underground water sources ceased their gushing, and the torrential rains stopped. So the flood gradually began to recede. After 150 days, exactly 5 months from the time the flood began, the boat came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. 2.5 months later, as the waters continued to go down, other mountain peaks began to appear. I want to throw this out to you guys right in the beginning. What an interesting way for Moses to pin the introductory statement. I don't think it was divided up into chapters at that point, but certainly in thought. But God remembered Noah and all the animals in the boat.
I didn't know God could forget.
I love the picture that is painted with this phrase. God obviously never misses a trick when there's an opportunity here. And let's just go to the spiritual side of it. No matter where you're at, if you feel abandoned, if you feel stuck, I mean, let's just put Noah where he's at. If you feel like, we'll cover this in a minute. He was on that boat little longer than 40 days, and we'll unpack that as we get in that scripture. But just the beautiful picture that God didn't forget about me. Like almost read the other side of the coin. Yeah, God remembered Noah, but how about Noah's side of the coin of that, and that God hasn't forgot about me. And I love the picture that is painted. Again, it's it parallels with the story, but I do love the spiritual implication there. And I do believe that this is it's referenced in the here we go, Jim. It's referenced in the New Testament that of Noah, and only 8 were saved by the ark. And there's a lot of representation here and a lot of symbolism of salvation and what the ark represented. But I just Winston, when you said it that way, it just sparked that visual for me, man. I love the picture and the word picture, if you would, of God has not forgot about me. God didn't lose me. I mean, we're talking about a flood that covered the entire earth. We could lose a lot of stuff. If you've ever seen the tsunami movie, I can't remember the name of it. Just the destruction that happens as the walls of water rush in, and it's such chaos, and you don't know where it's at. So Noah's obviously experienced that at a literal global level, and then just to have this point of, and God remembered Noah. Anyway, that's the first. I can read this once, or I can read it 25 times, and I'm always going to just settle in that moment right there.
That's good. I think of also the fact that there's a theme of remembrance, throughout Scripture when it comes to God and His people. And oftentimes God is reminding His people not to forget Him. And when, kind of touching on Gary's book, how we perceive chaos, and Noah is in this, perceivable chaotic, story. Sometimes we read these Bible stories and it seems really romantic, and oh man, he's the hero and he's in an ark. That had to be straight chaos. All of the things that Noah's navigating is chaos. And to your point, Matt, that, at some point, maybe he questioned, is God still there? And then, that leads to, all right, let me do my own thing. And let me focus on, let me try to figure out what I need to do. And we end up forgetting God at some point if we, kind of follow that thread. And so, I think about that idea that even if we forget God in our own, frustration, or in our own, trying to process the chaos, God still doesn't forget us.
You'd wonder after 250 days, when is this going to stop? That idea of waiting on God too. It just, if He told him in advance, well, in the 250 days it'll stop. But I don't know whether He did tell him that. It's not recorded. But boy, waiting is hard.
I don't have to work hard to be agreeable with what the three of you have said. I mean, first thought that came to my mind was remember that God remembers. And that's what, same thing you guys are saying. It's just a different play on words. But the conviction, well, I think two things happened to me emotionally. Emotionally, I thought, God does know my name. He's big enough to be small enough, to care about me. But the conviction part was, it's just so true of me. It doesn't matter how many times God has demonstrated his faithfulness. In the moment of the new trial, how quickly I forget and wonder if he remembers me. And when I think about faithfulness, I think faithfulness explained through heroes like Noah is to be faithfully trusting in a faithful God. That's what faithfulness looks like for us. It's not by our might or our power or effort, our performance, but it's placing our faith in his faithfulness, and that's what makes us faithful. Is so opposite of what we can learn living a life without faith in God.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think?
The Hebrew word here is zakar, Zakar, and it's not a recalling of memory or, I remembered him, but in looking this up and studying this over the years, it's a call. It's a call to action or a committed action. I think I read one phrase saying that this is based on the covenant relationship. And again, this is why it parallels with the salvation of what happens in the New Testament. It's a covenant relationship. God he just didn't, oh yeah, I left a boat floating around out there. I mean, I shut the door on it. But yeah, it's float. Oh, I better go find it. No. It's a committed covenant call to action that I'm committed to those that are in this ark of to their salvation. I think Winston, you've said it, Gary, you've alluded to it a little bit, but think about, it's nearly a year on this ark. Somewhere you forget this is your salvation. Like somewhere along the way, you're like, this is getting old. This is, I'm kind of, this chaos, this smell, but no. This is your salvation. Don't be careful. Be careful what you want to rail against here and what you want to complain about, because this is the thing. This is the thing that is saving you. So.
Okay, I might take this left field, but you just triggered a thought. When Scripture tells us to work out our salvation, is that in the same vein where, man, I'm saved, but also this Jesus thing is hard. This obeying and this submission is hard. Yeah. Being stuck in this container of salvation is a little frustrating. How do I work salvation?
That's good. Yeah.
We kind of touched on that last time, right? Where we talked about faithfulness and perseverance are, closely related to each other, right? And in fact, there's Christian doctrine about, the perseverance of the saints, and what that means.
Did you notice, Jim, though, that this said he remembered Noah and the animals?
The animals. Yeah, but we could give a flip about the animals, so we skip right over that. but
really, we're the ones that need the animals. So
true. And the provision. But you could even read it in this way. I'm going to pull up Pastor Matt on us. I mean, doesn't the book of Proverbs tell us that a good man takes care of
his animals?
I
wouldn't have thought of that. Oh, that's good.
That's good. You see a man kick a dog, then he's been put in a different category.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
I think the other thing that came to mind is, if you go back to the last verse in chapter 24, in chapter 7, verse 24. And again, when this text was written, it wasn't broken up this way, but the editors, I liked how they broke up chapter 7 from chapter 8. verse 24 says, and the water covered the earth for 150 days. To Matt's comments, sometimes you forget that what's bothering you sometimes is what is saving you. And then he goes, but it's almost like we're shocked. So right when we thought we were forgotten, God remembered us. And even my pet Charlie, it's just if you have a Bible and you like writing in it, underline it, but I certainly would say that's a good one to underline there. Chuck Smith said something, the founder of Calvary Chapel. He said something about the Bible that the first time I heard it, my evangelical Orthodox Christianity initially knee-jerked against it. But, Chuck was definitely more open to the mystery of how God and man, dance together, if you will. And I was raised in this hard line, theology about this and that and the other thing. So sometimes stepping into those kind of ideas throws me for a loop. But he said something like this. He said, the Bible uses the best that we have, words to describe the indescribable. And what bothered me about that is, I believe that Scripture has been ordained and breathed literally by God in partnership with man. So I didn't really have room for that weakness that we have a tool, as great as it is, language, that falls so short of describing this incredible, loving, merciful, sovereign God. And this is about the best we can do. We're shocked. We kind of join the angels in a choir song that we don't know why God saves us either. And wow, we're shocked there. But I mean, yeah, you're laboring through these first 7 chapters. There's some good stuff in those first 7 chapters, but then you get to chapter 8 and it says, "But God remembered us." What a great deal. Great deal.
Which I think parallels, or offsets would be the better word. Previously, when God regretted, and now God remembers. Yeah. He regretted he made man, and we see that emotion, and we see that obviously this is that was right before the flood. that's how he dealt with his regret was, let's flood the earth. But now, on the other side of that's still his creation, the value that he adds to his creation in this statement of, yes, I may have regretted, and everyone did. If they thought evil, they did evil. But there was a righteous man. There was one who was holding to the standard of God, and I remembered him. And I think it's again, it's the words of Jesus, as it was in the days of Noah, as it was in the days of Lot. This is just one of those moments that, as we look at where we're at in the world today, we can take hope as followers of Christ that all the chaos in the world can ensue. But I believe Genesis chapter 8, verse 1 would come alive for every believer. No matter what's happening in the world around us, God remembers us, or if God is going to take action because of a covenant relationship that he has with us. And so I think there's so much beauty in that as believers.
One last thought on this first sentence is this theme through Scripture about the role of water. It's in the very first chapter of Genesis and the last chapter of Revelation, and the water of life, in this case, the cleansing effect of the water, just a lot. I love your analogy about what saves us can be the thing that seems unpleasant, and the water both judges and delivers.
Yeah. Wow. There you go. That's so good.
Yeah, and I really, and just to reemphasize it, I think Chuck Smith's words are really wise, and they should make us lean into Scripture more, knowing that our language does fall short, and so if I can use the word, it is fun to try to use language to describe an indescribable God. And it also creates more grace in the process. I'm not suggesting that we change the meaning of Scripture. I'm just saying, like you mentioned, Matt, regarding here God regrets and now God remembers. How else are we going to say it? It made God really sad. It made God mad. What synonyms do we have, to pull from? It's just like when some of us get angry, we're searching for a word to express ourselves in the right way, and often we regret the words that we choose because they just fall short to the emotion, of what we're feeling. But yeah, shoot, the whole episode could be upon that. In verse 6, we continue the narrative. After another 40 days, when's this going to end, right? After another 40 days, Noah opened the window he had made in the boat and released a raven that flew back and forth until the earth was dry. I think we need to talk about that raven here in a minute. Then he sent out a dove to see if it could find dry ground. But the dove found no place to land because the water was still too high. So it returned to the boat, and Noah held out his hand and drew the dove back inside. 7 days later, Noah released the dove again. This time, toward evening, the bird returned to him with a fresh olive leaf in its beak. Noah now knew that the water was almost gone. A week later, he released the dove again, and this time it did not come back. So, are we reading too much into Scripture when we talk about the significant? There's the mechanics of him using tools, that God has given him to measure the progress and their eventual release. But is there any significance, or are we adding hyperbole to consider these birds and what they all mean?
I want to tag in on one phrase real quick before we do that. I think there is a lot to look at between the raven and the dove, but it says that after 40 days, Noah opened a window. We know that God shut the door. The scripture's clear to that. God shut the door. But there was an opportunity for Noah to open up to see the goodness of God. And I'm not trying to stretch this so poetic that it's, we could write a love song about this, but I'm just, there's something powerful that when God shuts a door in our life, that we need to respect that enough, because I think I would have had enough of it at that point that a window wouldn't be enough. Like it seems a little drier. I'm going to kick the door open, because had he done that, they would have all drowned, because the earth was still covered in water. And so again, more of that idea of when God is closing doors in our life, we need to understand how much protection is in that. Yeah, we use the word direction a lot because we want God to guide us and direct us and kind of really give us what we want, and him to agree with our agenda most of the time. But really, when God shuts some doors, he's shutting those doors for protection. And in this moment, Noah made the right decision to a window. Again, there's a lot of analogies here, but the window opens up to allow him to look up, to allow him to look to the heavens, to allow him to look to the goodness of God that is happening around him. Whereas if he tried to go kick open the door God had shut, it would have led to some destruction in his life there. Over the last couple months, as I've been reading through some of these stories again, I thought it was interesting that the writer is in God, and God is being clear enough here that pay attention to these details. I'm anxious to hear about the raven and the dove, though.
One distraction, Jim, before you even dive into that. Did you guys notice that, or have you seen the back on the flood itself? It says the waters receded and they'd come up from the deep. They have recently discovered that there's 3 to 4 times as much water below the surface of the earth as there is in the ocean.
Oh, wow.
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 That,
I did not.
and it's Just a little tidbit of
Yeah.
this, the subtlety of the scripture says it came up from the deep
Yeah.
and then it receded. And just another thing of something written thousands of years ago that we're now discovering.
And that's exactly what we count on you for, Gary, bringing those things to the surface. Pun intended.
No pun.
Oh, Lord.
So back to the raven.
Yeah, a raven is a glorified crow. It's a scavenger. It's a turkey vulture. It's maybe not that far. But why the crow? Why the crow? And I don't know about you, but the language seems a little bit vague as to and fro, back and forth. I think in Sunday school I was taught that he came back, even though it doesn't exactly say that. He came back because there was no place for him to land.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, let's say we take that interpretation. Why the dove? Why did the crow get canned? Did he get fired?
He didn't return.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if he landed on a floating carcass. If it's a symbolism of the flesh, symbolism of, I'm probably reading too much into this, but I'm going, why such detail? So Noah's retelling the story, and he makes it clear to whoever is going to write this down someday that I didn't send out a sparrow. I sent out a crow, and the crow, went all over the place. And then I sent out a pigeon, and I'm just going, what's that about? I'm not even talking about the pigeon yet. Yeah. I don't know.
Sometimes we get in our own humanity gets in the way. Could it be that Noah's looking at this and saying, well, I know there's going to be dead things out there, and a raven or a scavenger bird will go pick at dead flesh of something. And so is it, if the land is dry, it'll find the dead body or the dead animal or the dead whatever and go land it. Never thinking, though, that the beauty of what the dove would find, that it would find life. Noah sends it out thinking it's going to find death. But the second time around, the dove is going out, and what's it going to find? It's going to find an olive leaf, a branch, something that is living, that has made it through. And so too many times we're looking, I'm just preaching sermons now for fun, I guess, but too many times we're looking out at, in our humanistic reasoning even, of saying, well, I know something have died, so if it goes and finds something dead out there, and God's saying, sure, that's one way to look at it, but why don't you go find what's alive out there and see what's ready?
Well, my mind went to the first Adam and the second Adam.
There you go. That's way better than mine. That's way better than I.
Yeah. First Adam was a crow. The second Adam extended an olive branch of peace. Yeah. I mean, it will preach anyway.
It will. Either one of those will preach good. So.
Right.
I had an instructor in Bible college. He said, look, it'll preach real good. It doesn't mean you can put it on paper and live it out, but man, that'll preach real good. Just get up there and say it real good. So, yeah.
Heck, we can even use that in the secular world, and with our leaders, we can say, hey, are you a crow looking at constantly picking on people, or are you a pigeon a dove.
A dove.
That brings back an olive branch of peace. Which are you? Yeah. Are you a peacemaker, or are you, a flesh-eating, sucking barbarian?
Don't hold back, Jim.
Okay.
That's funny.
That broken pipe, you triggered.
Yeah. It's funny that we're talking about the flood, since I had one today. So maybe yes. It kind of set me a little sideways.
There you go.
Instead of drinking my coffee, pondering life with my wife, in my pajamas. I was out front trying to shovel through ice to get to a shutoff valve to save from further destruction of a busted pipe in the frozen tundra of the northern San Antonio.
Yes.
Sometimes the chaos is your salvation, man.
Yeah, Jim,
He's still
go
looking
ahead.
for that salvation.
Yeah, Jim, you raised the question when you read these things slowly and think, why is that there, et cetera. And you kind of go on through this a little farther, and just the detail. He says he puts out his hand. Well, it says the dove found no resting place for the sole of her foot. That level of detail, and then he puts out his hand and took her and brought her into the ark to himself. It feels so real. Who would write that? It's like an eyewitness talking about this. It's, I don't know, just very personal.
It goes back to the art of storytelling, right? I mean, for oral tradition to be as strong as it is, that becomes a mainstay. You can't just say, I went to the house and made myself a sandwich. You wouldn't say it that way. I mean, you would know what the doors look like to the front of the house. You would know what the flooring was like, where the sustenance came from, the utensils being used, all to trigger the memory, of the facts of the story. Because if you tried to throw something else in there versus fly at 30,000, you fly at 30,000 feet, you don't remember as much. But when you get into the detail, your mind knows, wait a second, I don't remember him saying the balloons were blue and yellow. I just remember him saying there were balloons, right? So I think that's part of it. I think part of it, may not be these great theological hyperboles or typologies. Maybe they are, and there's nothing wrong with it either way. But I certainly see God's hand once again preserving the story of life for us, which we find ourselves as actors too. And that's really fun.
Hey everyone, we're going to take a brief break from the podcast to let you know our very own Jim Piper has released a brand new book called Story, The Art of Learning from Your Past. Everyone has a past, but not everyone learns from it. Jim unpacks lessons in this book that help leaders and learners understand the potential our past has to impact our present and our future. Be sure to grab your copy of Story where books are sold. All right, let's get back to the podcast.
Shall I continue?
Let's go.
All right. We are in verse 13 for those that are following along. Finally, when Noah was only 601 years old, 10 and a half months after the flood began, that was a nice footnote, Noah lifted back the cover to look. The water was drying up. 2 more months went by. Another 2 months.
Yeah, don't blow by that. Just
Yeah, they're not going to blow by the waiting.
Woo. Yeah.
And at last the earth was dry! Exclamation point here, which is also consistent in the original. There's an exclamation. Then God said to Noah, "Leave the boat, all of you." Yeah, I'm sure that was a difficult. Had to twist their arm to get out of there. Release all the animals and birds so they can breed and reproduce in great numbers. So Noah, his wife, and his sons and his wives left the boat, and all the various kinds of animals and birds came out pair by pair. We got to keep going. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord and sacrificed on it the animals and birds that had been approved for that purpose. And the Lord was pleased with the sacrifice and said to himself, I will never again curse the earth, destroying all living things, even though people's thoughts and actions are bent toward evil from childhood. As long as the earth remains, there will be springtime and harvest, cold and heat, winter and summer, day and night. There's a lot in that last section.
So good.
Especially that cold part.
He goes. He's not going to let that die. I don't see ice. I don't see frozen pipes and ice in here. But Jim, you can just deal with that cold part. I love verse 20. Noah built an altar to the Lord. He came out. I mean, I would be too, but he came out and worshipped. He could have come off that. He could have come off there a lot of ways. Could have mad, irritated, whatever it was. But he came out and he worshipped. I hadn't thought about this, but as you were reading it, Jim, it said he took some of the clean animals and clean birds. Okay, God, this is costly sacrifice. Like we've worked hard to preserve, and God said that's fine. We've preserved, but it is. There's something about sacrifice that costs something, a worship that costs, and so I love the. And at verse 21, the Lord smelled the pleasing aroma. And I think the aroma was way more than just what was happening on the fire of the altar, but it was the attitude and the reverence that Noah had when he come off. And I just it's just a reminder to me that no matter what I'm going through, no matter what's happening in my life, I should always find a place to build an altar. If I want to arouse the senses of God and his sense, if you would, there's something powerful in my worship.
That's good. It makes me think of Revelations 5 and 8. Talks about the golden bowls full of incense in God's throne room. That it's the prayers of the saints that are as incense to God. And so just that same vein, that your worship is never wasted, right? And sometimes it feels like, whether you're praying and you don't get a response, it feels like God has forgotten you, kind of like how we started this conversation, or whether it be a celebratory response, your worship to God is never wasted. We find ourselves worshiping other things and investing our time and our energy and sacrificing for all kinds of things that may never have the return on investment we expected. But worship to God is never wasted.
You wonder the parallelism of, this sacrifice was pleasing to God, and we're told that it pleased God in Isaiah to crush his son. The significance of what Jesus did and the significance of this sacrifice was really a new kingdom. It's a new start, and Jesus is a new start. It's only on a much bigger scale.
I love the detail. Jim, you brought this up a while ago. In verse 21, never again will I curse the ground because of humans. And he says, though, even though every inclination of the human heart is evil from childhood, is what my translation says. He said, never again. I'm just not going to do it. And I know we're going to get back to a place that looks like this. I know we're going to get to a moment in time because of the human heart, because of evil, because born in sin, shapen in iniquity. But I'm not going to do this again. So I just, again, love the detail of it.
I know for some listening, it might sound weird to say that as humans are trying to relate to this invisible God that has been made visible through and animated through the person of Christ as a direct representation of God, but also an indirect with all of his other creations. Not the least of these is relating and relationships. And as we try in our adolescent faith to perform for God, sometimes we forget that, because we're so practical thinking, that sometimes relating to God isn't about practicality in the sense of, look what I've accomplished, look what I've done. Not that that's bad, that's good, but the extravagance of expressing love. That's an uncomfortable topic for a lot of men, expressing love. But this sacrifice that you all pointed to was an offering of consecration. It was an offering of commitment. It was a way for Noah to take a prized possession and hand it back to God like Mary did with the oil, to Jesus. I think what it caused me pause to do is as a man, there's a part of me that sometimes, casts God in this idea of male, which lowers his majesty. And I do believe that the man and the woman together is a picture, one of the best pictures we have, if not the best picture that we have of the image of God, together. But when I think about God, I tend to think of him as male. But even when I try to imagine him as warrior, so that I might be willing to bow a knee and cast my commitment to him, it still falls a little bit short, because I'm a man too. And how much better could this warrior be than me? Now, maybe he can slay me, but I'm still going to put up a fight. So it's still kind of like when I talk about the masculinity of our faith, I'm really falling short with words to describe what I'm trying to get at. That God is beyond male. He's beyond warrior. He's beyond conqueror. He's beyond description. And so it's only then that I can get myself to a place where I feel like I can bow before him, because everything else falls so short. I don't know if I'm making sense of that, but I see, and as barbaric as these sacrifices sound, I actually get it a little bit, because to be a man and to slit the throat of an ox, that's violent. I don't know what you got. I mean, that's just kind of where my contemplations, when I, in my mind's eye, went there and put myself in Noah's sandals and thought about, well, why would I do that? Besides the custom, or even not, maybe a custom. We know Noah did, but we really don't read much about it, after Abel. So.
This, Matt, you mentioned it, alluded to it, but it's interesting that even the sacrifice that we give to God comes from him. He's the one that told him to put these animals in the ark. He gave them the ark, and then he gives them the right of sacrifice, and then he gives them the animals to sacrifice, and then he's pleased with it, and he lets us be part of it. It's just it's hard to get. I'm kind of getting all tying in with what you said, Jim. God is only way we can relate to him is what we know, and we see other people and other animals and think of God from that context, and he's just not.
Well, it's a reminder to us that everything in the earth and the heavens is the Lord's.
Yeah.
Everything. So
everything.
Even when I say, is it even possible? Is it even possible for me to say that me, Matt Martin, is going to sacrifice something? I don't know that I can in full honesty say that, because I only have it because God gave it to me. So I'm really just sacrificing what he gave me. I think it brings Romans 12 to light. Brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. Well, I only have life because God gave it to me. Holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Gary, I think what you were saying, Jim, is saying so well, is it's all his. I mean, we've taken a very unique portion of the scripture to really drill down on that. He provided the ark, he provided the animals, he provided the place for the altar.
The destruction.
Ultimately, he provided the fire, he provided the destruction of the world. Like, everything was provided by God.
He brought the damnation, and he brought the salvation.
So
why is that so hard to keep straight?
Yes, the scripture, this just come alive to me. I hope this is theologically correct. Fact checkers, go find me out. But I believe I'm onto something, that that God honors obedience more than sacrifice.
That's what the scripture says.
That's what the scripture says. Why? Because I'm really not sacrificing. I'm just obeying.
That's
It was
good.
all mine anyway.
That's good. I'm gonna go with you on that one. I'm gonna go with you on that one.
All right, I'm done.
That's great. Gentlemen, have you guys heard of Dr. Vernon McGee? Yeah, J. Vernon McGee.
Mm-hmm.
So I was listening to him the other day. Like I tell all of my friends who are seeking God, but aren't into the Bible thing, church thing, and I have a lot of them around here. I've actually had one say to me, "Why do you read the Bible? You've already read it once. Why do you need to read it again?" And I said, I made this phrase up, I think, in my 20s. I said, I don't read the Bible because I'm a good guy. I read the Bible because I'm a bad guy. I don't read the Bible because I'm a good Christian. I read the Bible because I need it. Yeah. I need it. Now, so I like letting all kinds of sources of Bible teaching in my head and spirit. I remember as a young man listening to Dr. McGee, just because I kind of liked how he always treated you like family on the radio, even though you've never met. And he was so polite while he's telling you he's going to hell if you don't, believe this or that. So anyway, I was listening to him the other day and I thought, I did my own study, and then I listened to Chuck Smith, and then I listened to a little more of the preacher types. And then I landed on Dr. J. Vernon McGee, and he brought something interesting up. And I don't remember the name of the book, but he suggested, remember we've talked about recently that when this flood happened, this wasn't, a bad rainfall. This was absolute. What was the word we used last time, Gary, to describe it? It was cataclysm.
Deluge.
Yeah. It was like this was like, this wasn't the San Francisco earthquake. It was beyond. It was cataclysmic, crazy destruction. And we talked about mountains coming from the sea and mountains being slashed down to the sea. We talked about a lost beach in the middle of the Atlantic. We talked about the fact that in Salt Lake, you will find fish fossils at the top of the mountains there, the Rocky Mountains there that divide that from Wyoming. And, that's weird. It's not like it's a freshwater fish. It's a saltwater fish, and it's up super high where there's no lake, all that kind of stuff. Well, McGee recommends this book, which anyone can get if they want to. Just go to Genesis chapter 8, Dr. J. Vernon McGee, and he makes reference of it there. But he said he recommended this book because it goes into great detail about the science behind the earth falling apart. And you know what he said? In this book, there is a theory that, as crazy as this is going to sound, I'm going to probably get email for this one from all the science buffs who are going to call me a caveman, barbarian, simplistic, Bible thumper, blah, blah, blah. Bring it on. But he said that some believe that is when the earth prior to this or during this was set on its axis. Have you ever heard that before? That was the time. And, I couldn't talk back to Mr. McGee because A, it's a radio program. B, he's gone to be with the Lord. But I thought, well, wouldn't that change the whole galaxy? I mean, wouldn't that change everything? He points out that the way chapter 8 ends with these phrases, while the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. He just talks about how odd of an example that was, and that you didn't have those seasons until the earth was put on its axis. Now, you guys, I am not submitting this as any kind of biblical foundation. But
Thank you.
it just we've just sent Gary free. He's going to come back with a 10-page dissertation of true, false, or loony.
That's funny.
But one thing for sure, when Noah, I think the point is that where I'd like to leave chapter 8, unless you guys have something else to add, is that the earth was the physical earth, and in a similar way, the spiritual activity of the earth was one way when Noah got into the boat, and was radically transformed when he walked out of the boat.
Yes. Yes.
And then we kind of get the new start in Genesis chapter 9 when we come back. But I want to leave it open for any other thoughts that you guys have.
I think that's a beautiful bow on that scripture.
All right. Genesis 8 is in the books. Gary Harpst is going to be researching this idea of the earth on its axis.
Is that the same as the earth is flat?
Did
We
the
didn't go
flood tilt the earth? Did the flood tilt the earth?
Yeah. All right.
can't
Bless
wait.
you guys. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Join us again in chapter 9 very soon.
Thank you for joining us here at the Today Count Show. Be sure to like and subscribe on whatever platform you listen or watch so you don't miss any content. And stay tuned for more coming soon.